series of our lecture series on Introduction to Sociology, OSS 121. Today, part 5, we shall be talking about social organizations, social interaction, as well as social institutions. By the end of this lecture, you are expected, or you will be able to understand how social organizations relate, to know the important social institutions as far as sociology is concerned, and to understand the functions, motives, and some of the outcomes of these institutions, to know why they are there, why we consider them important, and what it is that they do towards understanding of sociology as a discipline. Now let's begin with the definition. What is social interaction? Social interaction are the processes by which we act and react to those around us. And social interaction was a study that was founded by Irving Goffman, who named it microsociology or social interaction. Essentially, what social interaction does is that it includes those actions and things that people do or because of a certain reason. So social interaction includes those acts people perform towards each other and the responses that they give in return. For example, having a quick conversation with a friend. That would be two people chatting. One will be probably asking questions, one will be answering to whatever the question is, and in that conversation there will be some sort of interaction and some sort of exchange. Hence, social interactions include a number of behaviors that sociologists find important towards understanding the human behavior. Remember, we said that sociology is all about understanding society and the beliefs and cultures of society. Hence, social interaction is yet another arm that tries to make us understand about this organism called the human person. So in order to understand behavior, sociologists divided this social interaction into 5 categories. And these 5 categories include 1. Exchange, 2. Conformity, 3. Cooperation, 4. Conflict, and 5. Coercion. Now let's have look at what all this means for sociology. Let's begin with social exchange. Social exchange is the most basic type of social interaction. Whenever people interact in an effort to receive a reward or a return for their actions, an exchange has taken place. So in essence, social exchange is a social process whereby social behavior is exchanged for some type of a reward, be it of a greater or lesser value. And the reward can either be material reward, for example, when someone does a job and then they get paid for the job, then that is an exchange whereby the reward was in material form. However, sometimes the reward comes in a non-material form. For example, if you do something and you help somebody and they say thank you in exchange to what you have done, then that is a reward that is in the form of a non-material form of reward, but yet a reward nonetheless. So there are other sociologists who found this avenue to be more interesting, and they are called exchange theorists. So these theorists are more concerned about understanding the behavior and the behavior of people, why people do what they do, and what behavior means. And some of these social theorists, they argue that whatever behavior that is rewarded tends to be repeated. For example, they say that it makes someone feel good to be accepted, to be acknowledged for having done something. So to reward somebody for some certain behaviors makes them to want to repeat this behavior. So if it is a good behavior, then it is something that is good that people will keep doing on and on again because of the good feelings of reward that they get after doing a certain particular action. Now, what does cooperation mean? When social theorists who are concerned with behavior, for them, cooperation is a process whereby people work together to achieve some shared goals. With cooperation, there's a process that gets things done, and there's no group can complete a task or its task and achieve a goal without cooperation of its members. For example, in a workplace, you will have that different categories of groups would come together towards doing a certain task so that they can complete or reach a certain goal. Sometimes cooperation works with other forms of interaction, such as competition, for example. Let's take a look at basketball, the game of basketball. In the game of basketball, you have this basketball team, the basketball players. They work as a team. And as a team, together they cooperate, or even a football team for that matter. They work together in cooperation in order to ensure that they score goals, be these goals in terms of football or even in terms of basketball. So in that attempt of cooperation and working together, the attempt or the goal is to reach a victory, to win over the opposing team. So maybe both social exchange and cooperation involves, people working together. So what is the difference between these two terms? Well, in cooperation, individuals or groups work together to achieve the shared goal. However, they may or they may not benefit those who are cooperating. And although individuals or groups may benefit or may profit from cooperation or cooperating, that may not necessarily be their main objective. For example, let's look at an example where a certain neighborhood needs to develop a local blood bank group. So in order to ensure that they have enough blood in their blood bank, these groups of people would have to work together to ensure that the blood is available in the bank. And in so doing, this is an exchange relationship with the blood bank, so that they ensure the blood is there and the blood goes into the blood bank, for example. In this cooperation, and most of the time when people are cooperating, they are cooperating with a question in mind that how can we reach this goal? And in this case, the goal is to ensure that there is enough blood in the blood bank. However, when people are involved in an exchange sort of relationship, sometimes the main goal or the overarching goal question there is that what is there in this exchange for me? And so there's the difference between cooperation. In cooperation, sometimes people have a similar goal, but in exchange, sometimes not, because sometimes everybody hopes to get something out of this working together in an exchange sort of relationship. Now let us look at conflict as a behavior. Social conflict is a struggle for agency or power within a society. And conflict occurs when two or more people oppose one another in social interactions. This can be because they are in an effort to attain certain incompatible goals, and sometimes it's because one party wants to prevent the other party from attaining something that maybe they also desire and wish to have. So it's said that from this perspective, from the conflict perspective, they argue that because they have every part of this conflicting groups or conflicting teams, because each one has their own interests, and because each one is interested in acquiring or attaining their own interests, hence that conflict arises, whereby although it is an exchange, but it is an exchange in terms of conflict that is mostly motivated by the pursuit of various interests depending on what the struggle would be about. Conflict is heightened by scarce resources, and individuals fight to regain control as a normal part of social life rather than as an abnormal occurrence. Yet this is another perspective that these conflict theorists believe, that most of the time conflict occurs as part of a normal part of the social life, because we'll find that different opposing groups are fighting for the scarce resources. Each person needs or wants these resources, and because they are scarce, hence the struggle, hence the conflict. Now, the conflict theory has three key tenets from which it operates. First is that it believes that society is composed of different groups of competing for resources. For example, if we recall when we were discussing about Karl Marx, remember we said that there were two different groups, the haves and the have-nots, and they are all competing for something. The haves, they want to ensure that they maintain their status quo, whereby they are enjoying a space of privilege. On the other hand, the have-nots are competing for the scarce resources that they have, and they also want those resources. And because the haves are keeping the have-nots from the resource, hence the conflict. And secondly, conflict theorists believe that while societies may portray a sense of cooperation, a continual power struggle exists between social groups as they pursue their own interests. And the third observational tenet of the conflict theory is that social groups use resources for their own advantages. And in so doing, this would be in pursuit of maybe their goals, or sometimes leaders are interested or have their own advantages when it comes to the difference in power relations, whereby leading powerful groups take advantage of the less powerful groups. And for this theory, all cooperation is only for the acquiring of individual or group resources. And this is the motivation behind the behavior that restructures the day-to-day interaction among people in a given society. So that is the conflict perspective of behavior and why they think people interact. They interact because they are always in constant struggle for resources, or everybody wants to advance their own interests out there, or those that have power want to use this power to their advantage as compared to those with less power. Now, coercion is also another behavior that interests these theorists, and for them, coercion is a social interaction in which individuals or groups are forced to the will of others. For example, in a war setting, you have these prisoners of war who are captured by the opposing or the part that is leading the war. So these prisoners of war, they can be forced to reveal some of the information to the enemies, because now they are being coerced, they are being forced against their will to reveal this information. And another example could be parents. Parents, because they hold a position of power, they could sometimes use this position of power to control the behavior of their children by, say, threatening to withdraw some of the privileges. such that they will tell a child, if you do this, I will not give you this. You will lose certain privileges. And we have seen this, for example, in Western societies, that when maybe a child misbehaves, they are grounded. They are not. Their rights to go out at certain times is retained or is withdrawn by the parents. Or sometimes maybe they would have mobile phones and things like that, or TV, and then they would be told no using the internet, no using the telephone, mobile phone for a certain period of time, maybe a day, a week, and that is some sort of parents using coercion as a means to control the behavior of their children. Coercion is the opposite of social exchange, whereas social exchange is a voluntary conformity, usually for mutual benefit, whereas coercion is a one-way street, that you do this, I don't do this, or I force you to do something against your will. And the central element in coercion is domination, which might occur either physically, through physical force, for example, imprisonment, or torture, or even sometimes death. Coercion is expressed through social pressure. For example, sometimes the use of ridicule, or the use of withdrawal of attention and affection, and even the denial of recognition. Remember, we said that people feel good when they are rewarded and recognized for some of their behaviors as a rewarding thing that makes them feel good. So when you neglect to acknowledge some of these behaviors, that is also perceived as coercion and a way of controlling or dominating others for whatever interest that the person who is dominating, the domineering party, would have. Now, conformity. What is conformity? Conformity is the behavior that matches group expectations. When we conform, we adapt our behavior to fit those around us. Conformity is an expectation of socialization. Social life, with its uniformity, predictability, and orderliness, would not exist without this type of social interaction. Remember when we were talking about socialization, and we said that sometimes when children are born, they are socialized towards behaving a certain way, towards not doing certain things because they are scorned upon by the socialization process. It gives you the do's and the don'ts. And when you accept the do's and you accept the don'ts, then it means you're conforming to that culture, you're conforming to the expectations, so to speak, of that social group, of that social life. Without conformity, there could be no churches, for example, or families, or even governments. And without conformity, there could be no culture and no social structure. Hence, we see how these things keep taking us back to society and culture. Remember, when we started this lecture series, we said that for sociology, the two aspects that are very key are society and culture. And so far, in all our talks, we've been seeing how much all the talks somehow revolve and go back to discussing society or discussing culture and the importance of these things towards understanding the human being, who happens to be the key subject of sociology. Because sociology is the study of the human being. Now, if you recall, we also talked about some of the social roles and social statuses. And in all social groups, people have statuses and they also have a role or roles to fulfill. Remember, we said that status is our relative social position within a group, while a role is the part that society expects us to play in a given status. For example, let's take example of a man. A man who has a status as a father in the family. Now, because of this status as a father in the family, some of the roles that he is expected to play or to fulfill within his family includes taking care of his children, educating them, guiding them towards what is good, what is bad, what is right, what is wrong, even protecting them from all harm. So these are the roles that are accompanied with the status of this man who has the status of a father. Mothers, on the other hand, they have complementary roles because they are both nurturers and nurturers of the family. And group membership gives us status and role tags, allowing people to know what to expect from each other. It is common for people to have multiple overlapping statuses and roles, making social encounters more complex. Remember, we said that society has been moving from less complex to more complex societies, whereby there are so many different fragmentations. If we recall Emil Durkheim, when we said that there's the organic solidarity and the mechanical solidarity, whereby in the organic solidarity there's a lot of complexities. Hence, now we come again to look at some of the complexities that sometimes are due to the overlapping statuses and roles that people have to perform within certain settings. Let's take an example of a mother, for example. Sorry, a woman, for example. A woman, in certain cases, could be a mother because she has a baby, but she could also be an aunt because she is an aunt to maybe the brother's child. However, this same woman could also be a grandmother in case the child that this woman has a child. But on the other hand, this woman is also a wife because she has a husband, but she's also someone's daughter. She belongs to a certain family. And remember, we said she's an aunt because the brother had a child. Now she is also a sister to this brother. And in some cases, she's also a granddaughter to the grandparents. So you see how overlapping all these roles are about this woman. And yet, in the social interaction, she gets to interact with all these people. But because the society knows what is expected of her at certain times or at particular within the social interaction and within the social relations, then she also knows what is expected of her when she's, for example, conversing with the mother. She would assume a certain role, as opposed to when she is conversing maybe to the daughter or even maybe to the grandparent or even to the brother. So she has all these overlapping roles and she knows which role to play at whatever time, depending on the social interaction that she would be involved in at a particular time. For each of these various kinships and statuses, she is expected to play a different role and to be able to switch between these roles instantaneously. And because she has been socialized in a certain way, she is expected to know when to switch, how to switch, and what role to play at whatever time, and sometimes even simultaneously within the same time. And we also, if you can also recall, we said that status could either be ascribed, that is, one is born into a certain status. For example, one is born into a royal family and hence maybe they are born as a prince or a princess. Or sometimes even one is born into a certain gender, you're a man or a woman. Those are statuses that are ascribed, you're born into or born with them. But status could also be achieved, and this means that you achieve this status by doing something. An achieved status could, for example, be that someone is termed a criminal because they committed a crime. by committing a crime, by doing the criminal activities, then someone achieves the status of being called a criminal. Or even when you look at maybe the war setting, when there's a war and a certain soldier has been very brave out there in the battlefield, and they gain all this, they get to do all these heroic things, then this person or this soldier attains this status of being called a hero, given what the person did in the battlefield. And even sometimes it could be as simple as a woman becoming a mother. Once you become a mother, then you achieve the status of being, sorry, if you have a baby, then you achieve the status of becoming a mother. And ascribed roles, as we have said, one is born into and, not really voluntary statuses. For example, we already talked about being a prince or the gender that we are born with. Although we know that these days, with the help of science and technology, there are a lot of things going on in the world, including what is now termed as the gender reassignment, whereby, for example, if one is born as a male and they don't necessarily like that gender, then they can, using science and technology, reassign and change their gender from being male to female. We know these things are happening in this world, and because of science and technology, the possibilities have been endless. Well, some cultures choose to emphasize some statuses more than others. Let's take a look at the US, for example. In the USA, achieved statuses are encouraged more than ascribed statuses. And these are encouraged right from the socialization process. Remember, we said from an early age, you teach a child to become something or to want something or to look forward towards something. So from an early age, children are taught the importance of, for example, independence and self-reliance, and to uphold, and even when you say that, you had the phrase self-made people, self-made millionaire, self-made this and that. And such people are celebrated within that culture, which means that that is something that somebody would look forward to, because it is something that is celebrated, it's something that people have decided to put importance on, as opposed to maybe ascribed statuses. And on the same scale, the mass media has been used to sort of downgrade and put negative images when it comes to ascribed statuses, whereby people who are rich just because they inherited the riches are not necessarily celebrated. And this cultural bias has led to the enactment of some anti-nepotism laws that for government jobs. And this means that if you are in government, then there are certain laws that would restrict you from maybe employing your family or your close relatives just because they are your close relatives. But yet, you can employ someone based on their merits and if they are deserving. Which, unfortunately, sometimes is really different when you look back at our situation and our circumstances. We also know we've heard of countries where the issue of nepotism and tribalism has overridden and made even life more very difficult for people, because not only do they put in power or in positions or in they give favors to people who necessarily maybe come from the same region or maybe the same ethnic groups, or maybe just, relatives, so to speak. For social roles and social statuses, emphasis on achieved status has led to acceptance and encouragement of the social class mobility and rejection of gender and ethnic-based restrictions. So what does this mean? Social class mobility is a term that is used particularly in regards to when you're talking about the classes. Remember, we talked about classes and classless societies right from when we were discussing Karl Marx. Now, social class mobility means the opportunity to move from one social class to another, in which case moving from a lower social class to a better social class, therefore, or thereby attaining a better status. In the US, as I said, people from all walks of life can have a dream. They call it the American dream, whereby within it, with your hard work, you can achieve certain things and you can acquire certain statuses based on what you have done. However, sometimes the situation is different. Remember, we said that it depends on what the society or the culture has decided to celebrate, so to speak. In India, for example, the ascribed statuses has been put in more emphasis and has been reinforced more as compared to the achieved status. Hence, social mobility is difficult to achieve until maybe just very recently, and this is also restricted to only certain classes of people. The Indian ascription system of the castes, I think you all had or read about the caste systems in India, whereby you have the highest caste, that is the Brahmin or the priests, all down to the lowest caste, that is the untouchables, and I think there are 5 or 6 layers in between. These caste systems are carefully ranked, and they are very rigid, and they are hereditary social divisions within society, within the Indian society. The caste system is reinforced by probably Hinduism as well as the traditions, and the caste identity determines who one can marry and prevents socializing across caste lines. So you see how rigid this caste system is, to a point that you are not even in certain times allowed to socialize across the caste system. You only socialize with members of your caste, thereby socialization really taking a toll by ensuring that every generations and generations learn the trade of their caste. Now we can move on to looking at some of the social institutions. Why are social institutions important? Social institutions are important because, first, social institutions are a collection of individuals banded together in pursuit of a common purpose. And social institutions can also be described as structures that define the right or the correct way of doing things in a society. They can also be described as patterned ways of solving problems and meeting society requirements. And they can also be described as the structure and machinery through which society organizes, directs, and executes diverse activities required to satisfy the human needs. So those are the social institutions. And we know that people operate within these social institutions. And they're important to understand because now we get to see how the interaction happens between and within social institutions. How are these social institutions structured? Structure of social institutions consists of ways of acting and techniques that people use to undertake their duties and to achieve successful, useful values. This structure is based on some of the following elements. For example, individuals. Here, individuals, you see that members perform different, say, economic functions in a society, given this economic strata that they belong to. For example, some could be teachers, others would be engineers, some would be managers, and so on and so forth. And similarly, even when you look at the religious institutions, we see that there are the clergy and there are the followers and all these other people in between. So all these individuals who conform or perform certain activities or actions towards a successful, useful value are said to be and is a part of, an important part within the social institutions. And then we have the material structures. And this is where members perform their functions. For example, when you look again at the religious institutions such as mosques, temples, or even churches, you see these are the material structure where these individual members would fulfill certain rituals and certain acts and certain things within these social institutions, and hence we tend to understand some of the social interactions that go in there and some of the conformity and issues that happen within the material structure of maybe the religious institutions. And then we also have a system as being part of the social institution structure. A system, this is an aggregation of those weights which organizes people as well as the material. Remember, I talked about the individual and the material, and now we have a system that sort of combines the individual and the material things towards a particular social institution. And for example, here in case, an example here would be the political institutions. We find there are different kinds of political institutions or political systems. Beginning with a democracy, we all have heard of what a democracy as a system is, what it's supposed to do, what it can do, what it allows, what it doesn't allow to be done within the democratic system. Yet we can also look at maybe the monarchy as a system, or even socialism if you please. But the family is also another system, whereby the family could either be a single family or sometimes a multi-marriage family system. All these are systems that enable us to really understand the structures of social institutions and how they interact and perform their duties. So, how do social institutions and associations or organizations differ? They differ in a number of ways. First, social institutions are eternal, whereas some of the social organizations are really temporal and short-lived. Another difference would be that the membership of social institution is necessary, while the membership of the association is voluntary. And another difference would be that membership of the social institution cannot be changed, while association membership can be changed. So what do these social institutions do? Let us look at some of the functions that social institutions undertake or partake. First, social institutions have economic functions. In economic institutions, they fulfill certain basic needs, for example, the issues of production, issues of distribution of wealth, sometimes even expenditure and services. This is one of the functions that social institutions do. Secondly, social institutions also have political functions, and the main function within the political function is to deepen the character of organized forms and to maintain social organizations. And the third function of social institutions would be the familial function, whereby the main responsibility is to increase the human race by bringing up new generations through family and marriage. Remember, we said family is not only a social institution, but is also a key socialization agent that allows cultures and practices and behaviors to be passed on from one generation to another, and to make sure that some of the things that are considered important are carried forward through generations. Hence, we see again the importance of the family as a social institution. And then we have the religious function. Remember, we also said religion and religious institutions are also a key socialization agent, so to speak. So the religious function's aim is to satisfy the religious or spiritual needs by upholding some of the mutual relationships between human beings and God, thereby, spreading the issue of morality, of what is morally considered okay, appropriate, and what is considered inappropriate. And it's in the same way conforming to certain institutions, certain religious institutions, certain religious practices, and things like that. Another function is the social function. The objective of the social function within social institutions is to maintain social control in the society and formation of exemplary characters. Another function of social institutions will be the social transformation. Remember, we said that society is not static, it is always changing, and these changes can come either gradually or they can come abruptly, but whatever the case, society is always transforming and changing. So the social institutions also have the function of social transformation, whereby these social institutions protect the social inheritance by transforming it from one generation to another. For example, people act and behave as per according to the teachings of the socialization process, thereby transforming some of the societies and some of the teachings from one people to another in terms of how they are allowed or accepted to behave. And finally, we look at socialization as a social institution. Socialization as a social institution is whereby members of each society may possess characters which separate them from other societies, and that is also one of the key functions of social institutions. Now, there are various types of social institutions, beginning with the family. The family we've seen is a key socialization agent as well as a social institution. We have religion as a social institution. There's the government or the politics as also another social institution within which people perform and do certain acts. Then there's the education. The education, if you can recall, when we're talking about socialization, we talked about education as being also a socializing agent that conforms with certain behaviors, what is acceptable, how to behave within a group setting, to listen to your teachers and to do to follow the requires and regulations of the school and education setting. Then obviously we have the economics and we have the mass media. If you can recall, we said that the mass media acts as a socializing agent by being an impersonal or impartial transmitter of information. And we said that with the advancement of science and technology, remember we said we saw the importance of mass media, particularly with regards to the internet and the social media, where people can get access to information right wherever they are, whatever time they may require or need to. And then we have the healthcare as a social institution, and finally social welfare as a social institution that takes care of, is interested to look at the needs and requirements of those that are lesser within the society, to ensure that they have some sort of welfare so that they can live a certain dignified life. So we did talk about many things in this lecture series. We talked about social interaction, and we saw how social interaction is helpful towards understanding why people behave the way they do, and some of the behavior is in response to certain behaviors. And then we also learned that social interaction, and we also saw some of its uses within the society, particularly the kinds of behavior, and how they promote social exchange, how they promote cooperation, and even sometimes conflict is a necessary part of social interaction. All of this is towards human development. In this lecture, we also learned about the social institutions. We looked at the type of social institutions that there are. We looked at some of their functions. And then we looked at social institutions. We also learned that social institutions are fundamental for maintaining culture and socialization from older generations to younger generations in order to ensure certain status quos are maintained and to ensure certain roles are played according to the culture of the people that we may necessarily be interested in studying. And in this lecture, we also discussed the structure of social institutions, which comprised of maybe individual or material structure, and the system and the differences between social institutions, associations, or organizations. In the next lecture series, we shall be looking at the issue of deviance, social control, and inequality as being important aspects of understanding society even further. Thank you for your attention.